Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, where the topic is how to accelerate your digital transformation with low code. Today's presentation will be given by Alan Bollinger, Director of Product at ProcessMaker. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Alan. Thank you.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Hope everybody can hear me all right and see my screen. So I am Alan Bollinger, this is me. And so I've been doing web development and product engineering for about 20 years. Like Matt said, I head up the product development for ProcessMaker. And we are building some of the new low-code business process management systems out there. So that's what I do in my day-to-day work. So we're going to talk about a little bit like what is low code, why do we care about this stuff, and why it's important to your business and why you should care about it too. So what is low code and why should I care? So low code is essentially the ability for anybody who is not even trained as an engineer to develop applications using some kind of a tool. So believe it or not, if you have ever set a rule up in Outlook, you are a low code engineer. Congratulations. Most of the low code tools out today are more of a drag and drop kind of interface. So you have some kind of way to orchestrate or organize your workflow and then generate an application with it. Why should you care about this? The most important reason to care about this is it's going to allow people who typically are not IT or typically not a business analyst kind of person to actually create a useful application to automate or to create an informational system for your business. There are some caveats and there's some things to be aware of. Low code does not always mean quicker. We are going to talk about how it can be quicker. It does not mean better. One of the things to be always careful of with any of this low code stuff is the people who are developing these things are not engineers, they're not designers, they're not people who typically do application development, and there are inherent problems in that very thing. Just because someone knows how to do a business process or do an Excel calculation doesn't necessarily mean that will translate into an application that someone can take advantage of and use. It may absolutely, but not always the case. So one of the key benefits of low code, no code application is that it is a much faster way to develop an application. So the speed pickup is in the sense of it doesn't require programming knowledge. Okay, so you can orchestrate or set up your components and lay them all out and understand the business logic of it much more quickly than you would with a typical engineering kind of application development. This in itself makes prototyping and quickly iterating super fast, right? You can throw a form element in, you can add an exception into the process, and you can really tweak the whole thing. This does not mean that you should skip on planning or testing of your application. These steps are still necessary to create a useful application and something you want to deploy, especially if you're doing a low code, you're deploying to customers. You still need to take the time to test it, and you still need to take the time to come up with a solution that makes sense and that doesn't run into the pitfalls that a typical application design would actually have, whether that's circular or running into a dead end or it crashes for someone on some weird setup that they have on their computers. The other really important part of this is the centralized point of truth. So what does this mean and why is this important? So when we say centralized point of contact, what we're saying is not that we let everybody kind of do whatever they want, because that actually is going to cause a lot of problems for your organization, especially if you're in an organization where you have strict controls over the data and who can access the data. So what you don't want to do is what you have today is you have smart people who know a little bit of coding that are automating specific tasks within the organization on their own. This is a very common practice. I know even I have done that in past jobs where I don't want to spend my whole day pushing a button, so I automate it for myself. With this kind of a solution with low code, where the application grows beyond my desk, having a centralized tool, a IT blessed tool that people can use is going to be key, because you need to have a central place that has some kind of control over what your people are doing. And a centralized access point that can say, you know, we're going to let you build this tool. We're going to let you low code this application for us. We think it's a great idea. We want to let you play, but oh, by the way, you don't have access to contracts, or you don't have access to bank accounts. Maybe somebody does that is low code that you are having inside your organization. Maybe you have a VP, a business analyst who wants to go crazy. You want to be able to have that control, and you want to be able to give a tool that gives to your people the ability to build these applications, but in a controlled way, and in a way that you can um, restrict. That's the big thing, right? Restrict and approve applications, so that you don't have a situation where, the Bob in accounting has all of a sudden all the social security numbers for all of your customers. So you got to be very careful and aware of that. But centralizing it, again, gives access to all that data, makes that data available as needed to different groups and different people. And it can be from suppliers and partners, people outside of your organization. Again, you want to keep in mind those permissions and that kind of thing to do that. I think I skipped a slide here. Scroll too fast. Better improve visibility and better reporting. I did skip a slide. Sorry, guys, it's the first time we're doing this webinar, and good times. All right, so improve visibility, better reporting. So obviously keeping all your applications and all your data in one centralized place with a low-code tool is going to allow you to generate and to process data in a central place. So rather than having accounting have a database and business having a database and the sales guys having a database, by having a single low-code tool where everybody can kind of do their work in a controlled way, you also create this centralized data set that can be mined for any number of different things. So a use case we have that we find very common within our organization, because we do low code, is you have, the general tasks, people processing orders, people doing specific grunt work kind of stuff. But then we have business people who are running reports against that raw data, and they're creating reports for executives. And then we have executives that are then consuming, aggregated data and reporting and getting emails from that system. And it all comes from that bottom to the top generation of data. So by centralizing that information and then again controlling the access to it, you can start at the bottom where this person only has the access to, say, control an order, but that will bubble up to eventually be a report for how much business did we do this month or this year or this quarter, and that kind of thing. So centralizing this tool is very, very important. So that went really fast for 4 slides. So some of the things to be aware of. Number one, like I said, make sure that whoever is setting this tool up, that there are restrictions and approval processes in place so that these applications don't leak bad data into your environment, into your business. Make sure that the people that are designing it, they may prototype something that is really cool and does a lot of really great things, but be aware that there will be a time where you have to redevelop that application into something more substantial. Because you'll say, okay, maybe it only works in this specific use case, but if we tweak it or change it, it could work in multiple use cases. Very common kind of situation. The other problem always that people seem to get into this stuff is you'll hire an engineer to come help with your low coding things, and engineers will say low code is a problem, or it doesn't work, or it can't service all these use cases, and by the way, we should use something different. If anybody's hired an engineer before, you know that is super common. Low code is about not needing that kind of person, but you want to make sure that if you do hire somebody with that they do have buy-in to the low code philosophy, and understand that low code enables complexity, but in a different way. You're not going to code the complexity, you're going to model the complexity. You're going to have business rules and things. For our system, it is in the business process notation, where we model those things, and there's exceptions, and we send alerts, and we notify people. So you want to be really careful. Again, this goes back to the idea that you need to be careful what solution you choose, how you do it, and what you approve. So I think that kind of touches on all the kind of stuff on low code, what it is, and why you should care. So I'm going to pass back to Matt. I think we're going to have questions and answers, and how can we help you do low code in your organization?
Yeah, thanks, Alan. Before we get into Q&A, I just wanted to sort of ask one question. So considering everything you just covered with low code, and low code is big, sort of across the entire spectrum of software platforms, not just in workflow automation.
Right.
So looking sort of towards the future, and not just what exists in the market right now, sort of what would you consider to be sort of maybe the biggest takeaway or a couple of the biggest considerations for organizations sort of looking down the road at low code technologies?
So there's really two schools of thought on low code. There are the people that think that low code is not complex enough to service all business cases. And there are those that feel like it is. The reality of it is it's going to depend on adoption. If we all adopt low code and we say that we really want to do this, then it will be the future of application development. I think it's some of the things that we can build today with low code, even compared to just a couple of years ago. It's kind of amazing the amount of complexity that you can build into a system. Because for me and for my daily work, we deal with modeling business applications, and what we find is that you start out with this really simple process, and like from A to B to C, and then at some point someone comes in and says, well, I'd really like to get a notification if B has this specific data use case in it. I would like to get a notification, right? And for us, we've looked at it and said, okay, well, how do we handle that kind of thing? And if you've used BPMN before, there are specific use cases for modeling that. So our software can bubble up an announcement or an alert or change something or fire off a different business process just based on that knowledge that I've added to it. So what happens is your process starts really simple and really easy, and then that complexity grows into your product as you go in and tweak and say, wow, I really wish it could do this, or at this point, I'd really like to have a note. So that being said, I think the future of writing code and sitting at your desk and typing away all day, I think the days are numbered for that. I think we're looking at, as we like to say, as a Lego world. You want to build something, you snap the Legos together, throw it out, and you're ready to go. Not to say that there isn't a job for application developers, because 100% they're going to be just as important in the future that they are today. But their role is going to be more around design, user experience, and general usability, right? And that is as true today as it will be tomorrow and in the foreseeable future, because that takes a specific kind of person. It takes a specific eye to say, if this button was here or this said this, it would make more sense or would work better. Or if we cut this step out, it would have no impact on this flow. So I think that this is here to stay, and I think that the days of hacking away at the computer are numbered.
So because of the shift of focus to the user experience, that sort of will have long-lasting implications just sort of on the development community itself.
Not to say that engineers are going to go away, because they're not. Right. But I think it's the same transition as when you went from God, I'm going to date myself here. If you went from a slide rule to using a computer to design your blueprints, it's not that they do a totally different thing, because you can do both. But the computer gave you this huge ability to do all this stuff that you could never dream of doing with paper and pencil, or would take you tremendous amount of time and effort. We're talking, this is that kind of evolution. This is going from a bicycle to a car. Not saying that bicycles are bad or that you can't do it and that bicycles will cease to exist, but man, if you want to get from point A to point B, this is going to be a faster route. It's going to help you to do things better. But again, the shift goes from, I'm not pedaling anymore, but now the roads are different, right? Now we got a whole different set of problems that we have to be aware of, making sure that this guy doesn't have this data, or that this application does some crazy report that crashes our whole system. These are all situations that as you move from that older method to a newer method, that are going to be problems that not necessarily that are going to be addressed, because and I know from our product, from what I build, we allow people to do crazy stuff on purpose. And but with that power comes great responsibility. quote Spider-Man.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Alan. At this point, I want to open it up to the audience. I know low code is one of the bigger topics in the tech world and really the business world. So really, there's very few people who could sort of speak to the business and technical use cases. So any questions you have for Alan, feel free to submit them in the Zoom panel. And we will get to as many as we can on today's webinar.
I'm going to stop screen sharing here.
So if anyone has a question, feel free to submit it through the Q&A tab in Zoom. Give everyone a couple minutes. We'll just give it another minute here. All right, we'll be sending, oh, okay, here we go. First question. We have a question. I'm not high tech. I want to build a SaaS system, software as a service system. Can low code help? So not technical, wants to build software as a service platform of some kind. How would low code help?
So yeah, absolutely. So low code can live in a cloud. It could live on Amazon or Azure or any of these cloud providers. And that application that you build with low code can be published to any of the systems. It's not restricted to being on your desktop. This is going to be typically as a server solution. Like for example, we do that, and where we allow for integration of our processes and our screens to happen within your website. So that SaaS solution, software as a service, we actually provide through a web interface that you can integrate. So it is not. It could be online. It could be something where you restrict, like I service this use case and I have this very specific thing. You could absolutely find a low code solution that deals with form entries and rules and all that kind of stuff going through there.
Yeah, and I think maybe part of the question is, can you build a software product using low code?
Yeah, that's the whole point. That's the whole point for sure. You can definitely build software applications. That's our main focus at our business is building applications. And what we say is that your applications are powered by ProcessMaker. ProcessMaker is not the application. It's your application that is running on top of ProcessMaker. That's what's important.
Okay, thanks, Alan. Got another question. Can we give an example of a low-code solution that processes high CPUs and manages big data?
Some systems use CPUs to manage big data. Well, I mean, I guess so. A good example of a low-code solution is, I would say, one of the things that we saw that we've seen people do with our software is they do, like, I think you're talking about something like Bitcoin mining or something along those points. And you could do that with low code or something along those with big data. It's going to depend on again, not the low code system, but the system that has all that big data and those CPUs within it. For example, in what we do, if you were to interact with, like, let's say like 15-bit miners or process a large data set daily or constantly, you would have an interface into that system, right? Some kind of API that you would talk to that is really good at dealing with those things. And then you would orchestrate that within your low code. So you would say, okay, run this, that does all this processing, And when it gets to this point or this timeout, then do something else. So you would wire that into your low code. That would be a task within your low code. Versus like your low code, like I'm just trying to think of how you would orchestrate something that is very CPU intensive. Again, it would depend on your process. It would depend on the steps that you're taking. And then what are you doing that's taking CPUs and generating a lot of CPU cycles? I think that would be really dependent on what the low code would look like and how it would behave.
All right, thanks, Alan. Feel free to submit any other questions as we get closer to wrapping up. A couple of the questions are basically the same. Where can I see a good demo of low code working or low code in action? In the follow-up to the webinar, I will share a video with everyone, but you can also check out our website, processmaker.com/videos. If you go to the video section, there's quite a few videos of some examples there, but also we'll have that in the follow-up as well as the recording of the webinar. Just had another question come in terms of cost, which is better if you had to choose between a low code approach and a fully developed application?
That's a great question. It comes back to where do you want to spend your money? So if you have a good low code solution, you don't need as technical a team to build out applications, right? Because even an application on your phone or a business processing application, um, you need a technical person right now if you were to wanted to code your own application that does really complex things. With low code solutions, you're modeling that business process. You're actually drawing out your business, and that changes where the knowledge is, right? Because it's not about having someone need a technical knowledge. We're not talking about reinventing the wheel or re-engineering pieces. We're talking about, oh, I wanted to send out an email at this point, so I drag an email onto the screen and I say send an email under this criteria. It changes the way that you do things. So it's again, it goes back to this idea that understanding what the use case is, building what you're trying to do can all be accomplished with low code, and it can be as complex as you want it to be. It doesn't have to be a small application. I see another question here about low code can be useful for very small projects. Um, that's not true. Small processes turn into big projects. It doesn't have to be just because you're using low code that your application has to be any less powerful. And I can give an example of that. So, for example, let's talk about an e-com solution. I have orders that come in, and that order, so all low code, I would say, order came into my system. I'm going to look at my inventory. I'm going to deduct from my inventory. I'm going to process a payment. I'm going to print a shipping label. I'm going to put it in a box. And I'm going to send it. That's a process. Actually, there's multiple processes in there, right? There's a shipping process. There's a credit card process. There is a notifying email that goes out at some point. So you just see how, like, I took a real simple workflow and all of a sudden I'm starting to make it more complicated because I'm starting to expand how my business works. And not only that, now let's say I want to send an internal notification to Bob in sales to follow up with this person, or I want to send an invoice to accounting. So a very simple workflow can start to grow and expand to become an entire business process that touches multiple systems and is comprised of multiple processes that all happen with different groups inside of your business. That's all about orchestration and how you do it within your system. The idea that low code doesn't generate big projects is not true 100% at all. It's limited really to your imagination.
So part two of that question was, does ProcessMaker go completely low code?
So in ProcessMaker, especially in our new offerings, we offer low code, and then you can get as complex as you want. So for example, we have this really easy to use API tool. It allows you to bring in data from any API using specific API strategies like Salesforce or anything like that. So it's really, I configure it and I can say really simply like, go to this Salesforce API endpoint and I want this data and I want it to be part of my process. But if you wanted to get more complicated with that, like you wanted to go to a graph kind of report and you wanted to process it and then you wanted to parse it and all this other technical stuff and get more complicated, we offer a different kind of way of doing it that allows you to have full control over that entire piece of the puzzle. So we say that we allow complexity through simplicity. So you can do it in a simple way, but if you find you're limited or you want to get really complicated, that is an option. You can get complicated.
All right, thanks, Alan. Another question here. Could you explain how continuous processes where future deadlines, dates are contingent on previous completion dates are handled in the platform? I assume referring to ProcessMaker.
So in ProcessMaker, that would depend. So again, it's all about your business rules and about how you model your process. So if you wanted to have deadlines or dates contingent on a previous dates, you would have something that evaluates the previous dates. Maybe it runs on a schedule. Every day it wakes up, goes through your data set and goes, give me everything, give me all leads that are 30 days old, and then I want you to kick off this new process to try to recapture those leads. That would depend on your business process and how you set up your business in it. But that is a tool that's available. You can look at that, you can parse data. I have one customer who every day, first thing in the morning, it goes through all of their old insurance policies, and any policy that is renewing in 30 days from this date, it sends an email to let them know that they're renewing. And it runs every single day and sends out a number of emails to their customers. And that email, again, the low code is that the email body is like a mail merge populated with data from their database, so that the email is customized, it has their information in it, their policy data, and every single day that goes out. And not only that, but it notifies the assigned insurance broker that there's a renewal and that the customer has been contacted. But that all has been modeled within their process.
All right, thanks, Alan. I see we have a couple very specific questions to versions, product versions. The topic of the webinar is obviously low code and digital transformation. So we don't want to go too far into 3 and 4, but we will follow up with everyone's specifically for those types of questions. If anyone has any questions for Alan on sort of the topic of the low code and accelerating digital transformation, feel free to submit those now. And any questions we didn't get to, we will follow up after the webinar with a recording of the webinar, as well as some examples of low code in action. And I don't see any other questions submitted. I'll give it just another minute.
While we're waiting for Nasser for your question about web entry, just know the ProcessMaker, the 4th version of ProcessMaker, is 100% API driven. So you don't have to use any of the stuff that we give you out of the box for the user interface or the user experience. You actually have the freedom to build however you want. If you want to integrate that directly into your application or power your application behind the scenes, there's no reason that you need to use our interface. So web entry is what you're looking for. We do have options where you can integrate with third-party form designers and things along those lines. And that kind of stuff will work out of the box with the core version that's available on GitHub.
All right. Thank you, Alan. Let me just see here.
Yeah, I would say the core version offers 90% of the functionality. The enterprise version adds some simple tools to take it to the next level. But at the end of the day, our enterprise, what we call enterprise, is built on top of core. Core is the same product as enterprise, just the enterprise has more additional functionality and a little bit different way of doing certain specific business cases.
All right. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, everyone, for attending today's webinar. Like I said, we'll be following up with an email after the event. Thank you again, and everyone have a great
There's a
day.
good question. There's a new good question from Tasneem.
We have a new question.
How can companies with existing legacy applications start approach about low code methodology, and what can be done right away and what takes time? This is a great question. So the question is, companies can start right now getting on the low code. Obviously, low code methodology is all about this idea that you model and you build your application. The beauty of some of the solutions, and ours included in that, is you don't have to throw out everything that you've done before. If you have an integration into some legacy system that you've already written, or you have some kind of specific setup that you want to interface, you could bring that code with you. Low code doesn't mean that you have to throw out anything that you have that's existing. You could bring forward those pieces of code that do specific functionality. You know, if you already have something, like I said, that talks to your mainframe, God, if you have a mainframe, I'm sorry, or something along those lines, you could take that code and you could drop that into your process as like a script task that knows how to do it. Most business processes can be modeled with low code today. It's rare that I have seen something that can't be modeled with what we've built and what some of the tools that I've worked with are. Um, the big thing that takes time is this idea of what all should it be, what all should the product do, and low code kind of makes it more of a organic build process, both good and bad for that. You know, organic can grow in weird directions, but it also can grow in a really great and really insightful way that no one had thought about. I know that for us, we add little features here and there, and you know, we make this one little tweak, and all of a sudden it blows up, and we can do things in a completely different way that we had not anticipated, or retrieve data in a way that we hadn't intended, but is very intuitive or useful. So I would say there's no limitations, no reason to stop on this. And this is something that everybody should be looking at, I think.
All right. Thank you, Alan. Just give another minute for any more questions. Okay, so we have another question. Besides orchestration, logging a modular approach to a monolith, why would companies invest in this effort from a business perspective? Same question from a developer perspective.
Well, it's all about where you want to spend your money, right? So if we take, I, again, it goes back to this whole idea that there are different engineers and there's different people that you work with, and some people are really great and some people are really not great. And I know that that's true of anything that we deal with. But it really is, where do you want to spend your money? Where do you want that to control to live? Right? Just because you're building low code doesn't mean that you get rid of engineers, or that you have to get rid of engineers, or you may still want to build engineers even though you may not need them. From a business standpoint, again, you could visually see what your process does. You can watch and tweak and tune that without the need of an engineer, without the need of that business investment into a specific developer kind of person. So that's really what you're looking at, right? Do I want to spend money needing someone highly technical and supporting servers and all this other stuff that goes along with that, or do I want to go with some kind of solution that is pre-built that does this kind of stuff that I can just kind of wire into my business? So there's cost in both solutions. Where do you want to put your money? Now, from a developer perspective, for those of you who are developers, welcome. You are all like me. I'm a software engineer. I've been doing this forever. Um, you know, I would say it's the same kind of thing as, like, if you're engineering and you use a framework to engineer, whatever your framework is, Springs, Zen framework. If you're using a framework, you're already going down the road of low code. You're already going down the path that we're going to ultimately end up on, because you're taking shortcuts to accomplish something that you could do without a framework. right? And that's what this is about. This is about, this tool is already built. We're standing on the shoulders of giants. This is already done. I don't have to deal with how to connect to a database. I don't have to deal with, routing or any of this kind of programming stuff. I just go in and say, oh, I have a route file. I have to type in here and I'm done. That kind of stuff is really what it's all about. It's about taking it, simplifying your life, getting you out of the nitty gritty stuff that you don't want to deal with. Yeah, can you? Totally. You could go write binary and do all this stuff, and you could really get really crazy technical if that's your thing. From a business standpoint, I don't know that that's a good business prospect. I don't know that I want engineers dealing with that kind of stuff or solving problems that there are already solutions for. So that would be my comments on that.
Thanks, Alan.
Mm.
Feel free to submit any other questions, any more questions. We do have a little bit more time.
Can we export our plugins to a new version? Yes and no. It depends on what your plugins do and what kind of complexity is in your plugin. It would be done by case basis for plugins. Yeah, ProcessMaker 4, even our packages are processes. So to give you a little insight into that, like even if we develop a package that does something very specific, our software is built with our software. So we're solving problems in the same way that anybody who uses our software would.
All right, thank you. Everyone, just feel free to submit any last questions or answers. Anything we can't get to on the webinar, feel free to email marketing@ProcessMaker or just respond to the email everyone will receive after the event today. And we'll give it just another few moments here. Alan, thank you for your time. Again, everyone, I'd like to thank everyone for joining today's webinar. As I said before, we'll be sending a video recording to everyone who registered, as well as some of the examples that were requested. Thank you again for attending, and everyone have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.